Rats invade the city. News at 11. Here's your look at the new NECA Toys Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Rat King vs. Vernon. After accidentally being exposed to radioactive ooze, 4 ordinary household pets are transformed into a band of wisecracking, pizza-loving, villain-dicing adolescent reptiles. Meet Leonardo, the super-cool, sword-wielding leader, Raphael, the hot-headed, hurling manholes and one-liners in rapid succession, Donatello, the brain behind the brawn, and Michelangelo, the ice-cream pizza-gobbling party animal. Whether it's facing fierce enemies or saving humanity from near extinction, with the guidance of their sensei, these heroes in a half-shell are always ready for straight out of the sewer action. And you thought you had a rat problem. Before we get a closer look at the new TMNT set of Vernon and the Rat King, the first thing we're going to want to do is figure out how tall the figures stand. I'd like to thank as well the folks over at NECA Toys that provided the sample of Vernon and the Rat King that we're having a look at in this review. It should be available right now, online and in stores, should you be interested in picking this setup for yourself. Vernon stands, according to the top of his head, 6.2 inches. We can switch that to centimeters, revealing that Vernon is 15.7 centimeters tall. Switching that back, defaulting it back to inches. There we go. I love this tape measure. Then we're going to go ahead and do the exact same thing with the Rat King. Stopping it right there. According to the readout, Rat King stands 6.8 inches in height. Switching that to centimeters, the figure is 17.3. So he's almost 17.5 centimeters tall. Let's get some size comparisons going. So I thought the best size comparison you guys would want to see is how Vernon looks next to April O'Neil. A figure that I already thought before seemed a little too small, seems even smaller when I compare her next to Vernon. I hope down the road maybe NECA Toys will give us a version 2 April O'Neil that will give us a slightly taller figure than the one that we've gotten before. With that being said, let's bring in a couple of turtles so you guys can see the comparisons. There's Michelangelo. I don't know why for some reason I always seem to bring Michelangelo in as a comparison. Let's bring in Raphael as well. And for, of course, some bad guys, let's do some comparisons putting in Shredder next to the Rat King. Now, I was really surprised to see that Rat King was a lot bigger. I suspected him to be about the same size as Shredder, and yet when you put them two side to side, Rat King is a lot taller than Shredhead. We can also bring in Bebop. And you know what? Of course, we're going to have to bring in Rocksteady, just to kind of give you guys an idea of how the figures stack up with one another. Still, even more, when I'm looking at all these figures together, all grouped together, I still think April O'Neil could be a lot taller. But that being said, you can still see how the figures stack up with one another, compared next to the new Rat King and Vernon. Like with previous NECA releases, both Vernon and Rat King come with a slew of accessories. I figured we'll start first with looking at the Rat King's accessories, simply because the things that come include with Vernon involve a little bit of transformation. Oh, that sounds intriguing. Stay tuned for that. But first, in the way of Rat King's accessories, he comes included with his bandolier. And in the bandolier are 3 soda grenades. In case you are curious, the grenades are removable. This bandolier, however, is rubber. It's like a very dense, rubbery plastic. So when you are pulling out the canisters, the little soda can grenades, they're kind of frictioned in there. You really have to kind of push them in and pull them out to get them freed and added them to the bandolier. But it's a nice little accompanying piece to go along with the figure. If you want to take that and put it onto the figure, I find it's helpful to actually just to slide it up the one arm, and then from there, actually it helps kind of if you have those further down, and then just bring it around the head. Now, the thing you will want to be careful of, though, is snagging it. You don't want to rub it against too much of the head. You could probably also remove the head as well, but I find there's just the right amount of clearance, minding, of course, you're getting it around those knots here. There you go. And you can bring that down and have him housing the bandolier. I think the likelihood of me actually having him displayed with this is pretty high, just because I like the fact that they included this. So it comes with those. Put the figure down here for 1 second. Rat King, of course, comes included with his flutes. What kind of Pied Piper would he be if he didn't have his included flutes? The flute is very nicely painted here, and not only is it painted in one shade, but if you spin this around, they've added that little bit of calling card, that shadowing that they tend to do with a lot of these NECA Turtle figures, also gets here on the flute as well. The flute can also be in his hand, Or if you want to display this on the figure, like I've seen some on actually package reveals of this character. Even on the back of the packaging, they actually have the flute slid into this little sash here on his belt. Now, the thing I will say about this, you can pull off this look. I don't know if you can actually see what's happening here. If I slide this underneath the sash, I want to show you it does house it in place. It holds it fine. But one thing that results in this, not necessarily damage to the plastic, but you can see the cracking has started to develop where the paint on the plastic is now starting to show a little bit of stress. I personally would not probably advise putting the flute in there. It gives you just enough clearance that you can't pull it off. But unfortunately, the result of that is that you can see there's these cracks that are starting to develop. One good thing is when you do pull this away, they're still there, but of course they're not showing as much stress. So I would probably just advise leaving that flute off. Even though the back of the packaging does technically show him housing the flute right there. As you probably already saw in this review, I would just stay away from doing that. Just don't want to cause those cracks. Because of course that's now permanent. That's not going to be going away. So it comes included with that. He also comes included with a canister of ooze. Let's get the, there we go, get everything to focus in on this. The neat thing about the ooze canister is it does actually open up right there. The only way you really kind of know where to pull it is this part right here. Well, I guess you could say it's on the other side as well, but this does open up and reveals the contents of the ooze inside. I think that's really neat, the fact that they actually did do that. Just be careful though. Be careful, because I've already pulled this off and it went flying across the room and ended up in a place where I didn't think I was actually going to find it. And then sure enough, I found the top of the lid. I like the fact that they do have a removable lid on it, but you just will want to be careful that you don't pull it off as hard as I did and almost lose the top of it. To also come include with the Rat King, he comes with a bunch of different interchangeable hands. Right now, he only has kind of open grabbing hands, but he also comes with like a finger pointing hand. And he comes with a couple of other grabbing hands. Like these hands are really good for holding like the flute, for example. So you can take the flute and just slide it into his grip, just like that. I actually would have thought that the grip was a little too tight, but what we can actually do is bring the flute slightly further down to meet it almost around the area of the thumb. And it just adds a little bit of extra hold to that, so the flute isn't going to slide out of his hand. So if you go to try to put the flute in there and you feel like the grip is just a little too wide, just bring the flute a little bit closer to the thumb and you shouldn't have any issues whatsoever. And then he also comes with like this hand as well. So he comes with 3 swappable hands. Of course, what kind of character would he be known as the Rat King if he didn't actually come included with a bunch of rats? He comes with 3 variations of rats. Some of the rats, as you can probably already see, are designed in such a way that they're supposed to be attached to the figure, as by the fact that they have these looped tails. The detailing on them is actually really quite good. They are different from one another as well, so they don't share the exact same mold, but the paintwork on them, especially in the eyes, the nose, and even in their tiny little buck teeth, that's the sound of buck teeth, by the way, is actually really good on these. Really, really happy with how they turned out. And then he also has just a regular, I wouldn't say laying down on the job, certainly not dropping on the floor. Hold on one second. Yes, like I was saying, certainly not laying down on the job, but sort of is in a way that it looks like it's almost perched on top of his shoulder. I guess you could technically take the rat and just fit it onto his shoulder, and just the right contoured shape. You can see right there, the rat fits perfectly on his shoulder. I think that's a nice touch. What I actually did at the beginning of this review too is I had this particular rat sitting inside of his hand as well. But I guess really the intended purpose of this is that it actually sits onto his shoulder. And like I said, it does it in a pretty effective way. You can also take these rats, the ones that we looked at before with the curled tails, and you can wrap them around his arms. There's actually a couple of different places that you can wrap them. You can wrap them a little further up on his forearms because, of course, the gap that they've given you on the tail is a little too wide, so you will want to bring it a little bit further up so it sits quite comfortably, as you can see, on his forearm. You can also take those same tails, take his shoulder, and you can wrap these around the tops of his shoulder. Again, looking like they're perched on his shoulder like that. You got to admit, that's pretty cool. That is pretty cool, the fact that they did that. So those are the accessories that come included with the Rat King. We'll just move that to the side. And let's get a closer look at the figure. I don't know why, for some reason, I've always been really interested in the Rat King. All the episodes that he had in the series were always some of my personal favorites. I always really liked the idea of a guy living in the sewer with a whole bunch of rats for an army. Does that make me a little strange? Perhaps it does. The head sculpt is really good on this guy. Paint is vibrant. It also helps, and something I've always said about these NECA Turtle figure releases, is this use of bold black panel lining, where really elements of these figures then pop and make them look a lot more like their cartoon model. I do like the fact that they've given him a smile on his face. Of course, the noted calling card is the open, headbands on both sides of his eyes. You can still see his eyes showing through. That's a really good looking head sculpt. Unfortunately, there's like a little bit of, not quite plastic problems, but like on the mold end of things, you can see like there's these little bumps at the bottom of his chin. I don't know if that's going to be the case across the board. It's very small and minor, don't get me wrong. So it's not something that's going to ruin the figure for me. I just noticed like there's all these little bumps at the bottom of his chin. But I'm very, very happy with how this one turned out. Colors are bright, colors are vibrant. Colors very much mimic the way he looks in the cartoon, complete with all these neat stitches where he's patched together pieces of fabric to make the outfit that he's wearing. Of course, there is that issue with the sash, so I would advise, again, if you are picking this figure up for yourself, probably don't put the flute right there. I mean, as you can already see, like there's a little bit of cracked paint where that flute actually had stretched the plastic. It's probably a bit of a no-no there. As we get a little further down on the figure, nice bright green we get introduced to, with some additional stitching again added to it. I also want to stress the fact that if you look at the stitching is actually its own thing. It's not just painted in place. If you run your finger across it, those stitches are sticking up on the plastic. NECA actually sculpted that in there. Really nice. Of course, when you look at the side of the figure, you can kind of see that divide where the front end of it is lighter color. The back end of it is more shadowy. So, of course, all of the colors that we're looking at, both on the torso and the lower legs, get then a darker version of that get treated to the back of the figure. You can see right there. And we get a little bit further down at the bottom of his feet. Again, all this patchwork outfit that he's put together himself. Really stunning looking work. So let's have a look at the articulation on Rat King. So his head is actually quite articulated. I would assume still behind the scenes it's just a regular ball joint. And yet, for some reason, I'm surprised with how much I can actually move this head. Down, up, back and forth. And I guess technically you could also rotate it all the way around. Although it seems to really, it gets a little stubborn to twist the head all the way around. But really nice how much articulation that head actually possesses. He also has an upper torso ball joint. In this case, he actually doesn't seem to have a lower torso ball joint. If he does, it's probably hidden underneath all this. And it looks like the sash is partially attached to his lower half. It makes me think that there's probably no lower articulation. It's only just in the upper torso, like this. The arms hinge out quite easily, quite comfortably at a full 90-degree angle bend. You can bring the arms all the way around. You can swivel at the bicep. You can double hinge the elbow. And of course, you can rotate the hands all the way around, whatever hands you decide to display him with. Something I also wanted to mention about Rat King and even Vernon is that I've noticed in the last little while, NECA, when it comes to these turtle figure releases, the joints seem to be a lot easier to move. In fact, like when I got Rat King out of the box, there was no issues whatsoever with his joints, no buildup of paint or anything like that. So if you feel like one of the issues that NECA may have been plagued with was excessive amounts of paint, I don't seem to have that, at least on Rat King here or Vernon. It seems like the joints especially are really quite clean. Just felt the need to mention that in there. Then, of course, when we look at his legs, let's just bring those arms down a little bit. His legs split out easily. Nope, no problems whatsoever there. Back and forth on the legs. They swivel at the top, basically where those are attached into place. He has a double hinge on the knee. And then he does have the articulation in the foot back and forth and up and down. The joint, let me just draw the attention to the joint here on Rat King. I don't know why, again, there we go, get that all to focus in. The joint that they ended up using here was a darker green plastic. It doesn't seem actually it's the same green. Maybe it is. It's just slightly off a bit that they didn't actually use a lime-colored green. It's a very small nitpick. It barely is a nitpick. because again, like it actually works well for the figure because so much of his outfit is patchwork anyways, that the coloring of the green not quite matching up, like I said, doesn't really bother me at all. So that is Rat King. I honestly feel like Rat King, for me, is the figure that I would get specifically this set for. I'm fine and good for the fact that we get ourselves a Vernon. I'm thrilled for the fact that we're getting extra side characters, because in any other instance in the past, companies that have released figures based on characters from cartoons, of course, you're always going to go with the primary tier A characters, and then of course tier B. You're never really going to give us releases of characters like Vernon, and yet NECA Toys has continued to do that. I'm just thrilled again the fact that we did get finally ourselves a Vernon. Let's have a look at the accessories that come included with that figure. For the accessories that come included with Vernon, he comes with a Channel 6 News camera. Now, while you may look at this and assume that it's the same camera that we got with April O'Neil, let me just bring in April's to an alarming size difference. You can see how much bigger Vernon's is versus April O'Neil. Now, April O'Neil was a field reporter, so I could understand she probably would just have a small, more portable camera to go around with her. Vernon, though, is a lot bigger in size. It's about the same design of camera. His is a lot lighter in color. It does have very similar aspects to it. I do appreciate also one thing that Vernon's camera has that April's doesn't. And that's a little bit of reflection on the monitor here. But again, like, I was really surprised with how big of a difference this particular camera was versus the one that came included with April O'Neil. The handle also works the exact same way too. You can move this back and forth, similar to April's. Let's just bring April's back in here. You can see April's does also have that. Just, again, a lot smaller. Quite considerably smaller, really, when you look at one to the other. Then, of course, all the rest of Vernon's accessories involve him swapping out hands and swapping out species, because all the things that he comes included with are things that you can swap out on his body. For example, he comes included with a pair of flat palms. Probably not going to be displaying him with these anytime soon. He comes also with a pointing hand, possibly gesturing April O'Neil for when she can actually start talking. Because, of course, he's going to be pointing the camera at her. Then the rest of the accessories involve him transforming into the Were-Rat. Very cool, the fact that they actually included that. I feel before we actually start transforming him into a rat himself, I figured we would actually have a look at the figure. Now I'm going to go ahead and pick up Vernon here. And like Rat King, very faithful, I must say, to the original source material, the original 80s cartoon. I never really was a big fan of Vernon myself. But I am a big fan of the fact that NECA Toys are giving us a Vernon. Think of when you would ever have gotten a Vernon figure released from Ninja Turtles. Of course, everyone would be doing the Ninja Turtles, the actual brothers, Splinter, all the bad guys. But think if ever there be a case where a company would actually start tackling the little side characters like Vernon here. It's pretty incredible. The head sculpt is really good on this guy. Really good. Of course, you got that panel lining, again, really accenting features on his face, like that real slimy looking kind of smile on his face. You know he's just plotting something. Of course, the big, large caterpillar eyebrows on this guy's head. Sculpted hair is really good on this one as well. Like Rat King, he has that two-tone effect, so the front end of him is lighter pink. The back end is more darker color. Of course, the shadow on the end of this, on this side of the figure here. He's got a little holster there on the side of his belt. Some nice wrinkles and black panel lining added to his legs here. And he's got himself his sneakers here. Really, really great job on Vernon here. I guess we could technically go through his articulation, and then we'll start transforming him into the Were-Rat. For Vernon's articulation, his head rotates all the way around. You'll notice as well, when I'm rotating his head, his neck wants to go along with it as well, because his head and his neck are two separate things. You can rotate the head independently on its own, up and down, and all that stuff that would go along with it. And then he also has neck articulation too. The downside about the neck, though, is as you're rotating the head, the neck seems to want to go a lot of times with it. So before you know it, his Adam's apple could end up on the back of the figure, and that seems a little strange, doesn't it? His arms hinge out, again, like the Rat King. Almost a full 90-degree angle bend, a little tighter on this one side than on this side here, but you can get a full bend out. You can bring the arms forward and back. I also want to say, too, like Vernon's shirt is very strange, because like his torso is a more solid plastic up top here. But as you get a little bit further down on his body, you can feel like this is all soft. and I almost feel like I can push straight through it. It's a very soft material that they ended up using. I'm wondering why they did that, unless there is just a regular base body underneath this, and it was a lot easier just to produce a molded piece that goes over top the torso. And maybe that could be one of the reasons why this is a softer plastic. I don't know. It does have a double hinge on the elbow, and you can rotate this back and forth this way. He does have technically articulation in just past the sleeve, and it's more so to do with the fact that you can pop this head off, or this arm off and hand off, and you can replace it with then the rat hand and arm. Stay tuned for that. The hand hinges back and forth, and you can also rotate that all the way around as well. He has an upper torso ball joint. You can again split the legs, forward and back on the legs, swivel at the top cut, double hinge on the knee, and then he has articulation in the feet, back and forth and up and down. There's Vernon as it stands in human form. The benefit of this guy is the fact that you can actually transform him. So we'll just put him down for a second. I want to show you his head sculpt that he comes included with. Now again, an Easter egg to one of the episodes of the original TMNT cartoon where Vernon was transformed into a were-rat. And it looks pretty good, pretty close to how it appeared in the cartoon. It's kind of strange because it looks like a slimy looking Splinter too. Like if Splinter decided to be a car salesman, for example. Have a faux mustache, slicked back hair with some sideburns on the side. That's kind of strange. I wonder, I would really actually, don't have my Splinter here with me right now, but I would love to see if I could actually swap this out with Splinter's body. I think that would actually be quite fun. But it does have some posability. You can open and close that mouth. You can see some nice paintwork done on the interior of the mouth. Very cleanly applied. Now, it's actually two pieces like Vernon's. So you just go ahead and take the figure, grab his torso here, and just pop off his head. What you're really wanting to do is you're going to want to pop off the head as well as the neck. Take that as one piece. Put that to the side. Then you can go ahead, just adjust the ball joint. Make sure that's right in the right dead center. And then you go ahead and just replace the neck and, of course, the head of the were-rat Vernon. One downside to doing this, I've noticed, is as you put this down, because this is softer plastic, because that ball joint on the inside wants to shift back and forth, you may find yourself fighting it more than what you think you probably should. But eventually, like I said, you can get that transformed. We're almost there. We're almost there. The last thing we want to do is replace out Vernon's arms from the sleeve part down to his hands with these hands right here. And again, showing you guys the look on the hands themselves. Again, I don't know why. There we go. Took a little bit. It's a detail work on the fur there on the hands. The nails also painted in there rather nicely. Then we're going to go ahead and take the hands. Now, I will want to suggest holding on to the sleeve. Why I say that, this is just going to twist off. Just wiggle it back and forth as you're pulling it. I would advise probably not pulling it off directly, but instead, as you're twisting it, there you go, you can free it from the peg. But it seems like the sleeve is a separate piece as well. And if you're not holding on to that, that part of the sleeve is something I'd want to keep behind, keep with the figure when I transform him over. You just want to make sure that you don't lose this, as that's a separate piece. So go ahead and take the replacement arm and do the exact same thing. We're going to just twist it back as we're pushing it back into place. There we go. You want to make sure it's far enough in there too, because the sleeve, the cuff of the sleeve sometimes drapes so far down that you actually think it's in the right place. And then you realize there's just a little bit of extra gap. So we're just going to push that in a little bit more. Go ahead and just make sure the head is fully in place. There we go. And then we're going to do the exact same thing on this arm here as well. Again, just wiggle it, hold on to the cuff of the sleeve. Just pop that off and replace it with this arm right here. I feel like I don't actually have that head completely in place, so I'm going to have to rectify that before final looks. But again, just pop that into place. Get the head all adjusted. There we go. And you've got yourself Were-Rat Vernon. How cool is that? The likelihood of me actually posing and displaying Vernon in this look is probably unlikely. I would like to probably just display him in his human form along with April O'Neil. But again, always goes back to the point I always want to make about these turtle releases from NECA Toys. I appreciate the fact that they include features like this. Even if it's not something myself I would ever decide to display the figure with, I just appreciate the fact that they actually give you episode-specific accessories that you can include along with the figure, or in this case, you can transform the figure of Vernon into something rather strange instead, the were-rat. The benefit of NECA Toys releasing these TMNT cartoon 2-packs is that it gives them the opportunity to release characters that people would be interested in getting, but not necessarily be going out of their way to pick up on their own. Case in point, Vernon. Would everybody be interested in picking up a Vernon if he was just released on his own? Be honest with yourselves. I would be interested in getting Vernon to go along with April O'Neil, but if he was sold separately, I think I probably would take a longer time to pick him up. Now, if you package him with a character like Rat King, now you're talking. I would be very interested in getting Rat King. In fact, of the two figures, I'm more interested in liking the Rat King a lot more, just because I like the idea of getting more villains for my turtles to fight. Vernon just sort of goes along with the ride, and it gives, again, a great opportunity to NECA Toys to approach getting those must-have figures out there to the market, and also throwing in their nods to the original cartoon, because you now get a chance to get yourself a Vernon for your collection. Speaking of also ways that Vernon can benefit is the fact he does have the transformation pieces to turn himself into the were-rat. And I like the fact that they included that. Not necessarily something I'm probably planning on displaying from my figure myself, but I just appreciate the fact, and I know I said at the end of this review, I really appreciate the fact that NECA Toys throws extra things like that into the mix. Even if you don't ever plan on displaying Vernon in rat mode, I just appreciate the fact that we actually get that in the first place. Is this a set worth picking up? I would say yes if you like Rat King or Vernon. But again, I think the benefit of packing Vernon in with the Rat King is that the people that are interested in getting a Rat King first and foremost, you're also going to be benefiting from getting a Vernon to go along with that as well. Let me know whether you've managed to pick up this set for yourself and what you guys think of the Rat King versus Vernon. I'd also like to send a big thank you out to the folks over at NECA Toys that provided the sample of Rat King and Vernon that we had a look at in this review. If you guys are new to this channel and you're liking all the content you're seeing, why not stay for a little while? I've got Rice Krispie Squares and brisk iced tea. Stay for a bit, sit a spell, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below, turn the bell notification on, and yes, come back to this channel Monday to Friday, 12 p.m. and 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, as that's when we'll post new videos online. And of course, there's always new NECA reviews lined up and coming your way, so if you specifically source out this channel for NECA reviews, you'll be in luck, because there's definitely going to be a lot more coming your way. And as always, guys, thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time.